Finally, we get to the list that you've all been looking forward to. It's time for the best games of 2012. I just want to reiterate that while it's likely we will share similar entries on this list, that the order in which they appear is entirely my opinion and should be taken with a grain of salt. That being said, here are the top 15 best games of 2012. Coming in at number 15 is SSX. Now, it's been a long time since a new SSX game has been released to market. For me, there will always be a special place in my heart for SSX Tricky for the PS2, and that's certainly the case with EA Canada's newest snowboarding classic. The game features mountain ranges spanning every continent, giving players the opportunity to scale 27 mountains across 9 different ranges. And since the game was released, the online competitive modes have been modded to include other players playing online, rather than just the ghosts of gamers playing in real time. Reviews of this game were extremely positive, with many critics noting SSX's sheer size and scope. If you are a fan of the previous games in the series, then be sure to check this one out. Coming in at number 14 is Resident Evil 6. Now, say what you want about Resident Evil 6. Sure, the AI is a little wonky, the story makes absolutely no sense, and it's way too action-packed to still be considered survival horror. But I don't think anyone can deny the high production values that went into this game. The story is split into 3 separate storylines, each involving 3 different sets of characters, as they try to contain a new bioterrorist threat known as the C virus from becoming a worldwide epidemic. Now, this game received mixed reviews from critics, and rightly so. But with a newly added skill system, a revamped online community, and several new multiplayer modes added, there's enough of an improvement here for Resident Evil 6 to be considered to be on this list. Coming in at number 13 is Sleeping Dogs. Originally created as a 3rd installment to the True Crime series and later cancelled by Activision Blizzard, the game was picked up 6 months later by Square Enix's London studios in order to finish the game. Now, on the surface, this game looks very much like many open-world action-adventure titles already on the market, most notably Grand Theft Auto and Saints Row. But there are a few things that set this game apart from the rest. The biggest change has to be its setting, taking place in modern-day Hong Kong as opposed to many Western-style cityscapes like Los Angeles, New York, and London. It's also different in the way it approaches story, putting you in the role of lead detective Wei Shen. Shen is an officer put deep under cover of an infamous triad gang, leaving the player to tote a very thin line between what it means to be good and evil. But like many open-world games, there's a lot of content here. Carjacking, fighting, singing karaoke, and gambling are just some of the activities that you will experience, all in the name of fighting crime. Sleeping Dogs was a welcome breath of fresh air in an otherwise oversaturated action-adventure market, and I was so glad to be given the opportunity to play this title. Coming in at number 12 is Diablo 3. Now, gamers waited patiently for the 3rd installment of the Diablo series for over a decade, and the numbers don't lie when you get right down to it. Setting a new record for the fastest selling PC game, selling over 3.5 million units in the first 24 hours upon release. Set in the dark fantasy world of Sanctuary, Diablo 3 takes place 20 years after the events of the last game, and contains the same dungeon-crawling action that players have come to expect. New features among others include an online auction house, in which players can trade virtual items with in-game gold or real-life money, as well as the ability to craft materials to create new items. Critics praised its intuitiveness and unpredictability when it came to the game's loot systems and rune systems, as well as its randomly generated levels. Coming in at number 11 is Max Payne 3. People couldn't have been more surprised when the debut trailer for Max Payne 3 was released last year by Rockstar Games. Sporting a bald head and a setting that takes us from the dark, dreary streets of New York to the sunny vistas of Sao Paulo, fans of the franchise were more than eager to jump into bullet time once again. Now, it's been 9 years since Max Payne 2 was released for the PS2, and with the graphical capabilities of today's next-generation consoles, Max Payne 3 certainly turned a few heads. On a technical level, this game is a perfect gem. Destructible environments, tight controls, and of course the now infamous bullet time mechanic. Add to the mix a dash of multiplayer, and this makes Max Payne 3 more than suited to be on this list. Coming in at number 10 is XCOM Enemy Unknown. The original XCOM, for those old enough to remember, is one of the best turn-based strategy games ever conceived. So when we got word that a remake was in the works, based on the original game, we couldn't help but get excited for this one. Unfortunately, the original remake was destined to be a first-person shooter with some supernatural elements similar to Mass Effect. And it wasn't until players demanded the original style of gameplay that Firaxis Games shelved that title in lieu of one more suited to the classic that we all know and love. So at the end of the day, did this choice pay off? The answer is a resounding yes. Not only have the graphics been updated and look fantastic, but many of the game's original elements have been added and enhanced to create a richer experience. Everything from turn-based tactics to resource management. Now originally I was going to put XCOM Enemy Unknown on my top 15 most surprising games of 2012 list, but in this case the developers did such a good job that I couldn't help but bump it up a few notches. Coming in at number 9 is ZOMBI-U. Last November, the Wii U launched with a total of 22 games, the biggest in its company history, mostly made up of first-party titles and third-party titles released for other consoles, such as Batman Arkham City and Mass Effect 3. But one game managed to stand out from the pack, and that game is ZOMBI-U. Made exclusively for the Wii U and developed by Ubisoft, the game pits you in an apocalyptic London after a plague has infected much of humanity, turning most of the world into flesh-eating zombies. Critics praised the innovative gameplay that utilizes the gamepad to track your inventory, to hack various security cameras and doors, and to check your map on the fly. And with a few nods to the game Demon's Souls, in the sense that if you die in-game you resurrect as a new character, ZOMBI-U offered something fresh and original in an otherwise predictable roster of games. Coming in at number 8 is Guild Wars 2. And you know, ArenaNet really did create something special with this one. Set in the fantasy world of Tyria, Guild Wars 2 follows the re-emergence of Destiny's Edge, a disbanded guild dedicated to fighting the Elder Dragons. Now there's really no one thing that makes this MMORPG a must-play. Yes, there's an enhanced skill system. Yes, there's a dynamic event system and dynamic combat. Content scaling, a high leveling cap, a new crafting system, and the list goes on. But really, Guild Wars 2 is a game that's bigger than the sum of its parts. And while not the WoW killer that ArenaNet expected, with no monthly subscription fees, it's definitely a healthy alternative to the other massively multiplayer online role-playing games out there, and easily qualifies as one of the best games of 2012. Coming in at number 7 is Assassin's Creed 3, and you knew this one was coming, and you knew it was going to be up there on this list. The culmination of the Ezio trilogy and more than 3 years of development from Ubisoft, Assassin's Creed 3 is, without a doubt, the biggest game of the franchise. Set in the years before and after the American Revolution, the game focuses on Connor Radun Hagedun, a Native American from the Mohawk tribe who gets embroiled in the age-long battle between the Assassins and the Templars. Nearly every aspect of gaming has been improved. Graphics, combat, physics, and more to the point, this is just an overall bigger game than the previous one, with the frontier alone about the size of Rome in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Now there have been some criticisms about this title, like sometimes it doesn't know whether it wants to be a free-roaming open-world game or a linear third-person action-adventure game, and to be honest I found the conclusion to Desmond's storyline to be a little bit lackluster. But the inclusion of naval warfare, sprawling battlefields, and a new game engine to boot makes this more than worth checking out, and easily takes the top 7th spot on this list. Coming in at number 6 is Dishonored. Now, Dishonored is without a doubt the best new IP to come out of 2012, as well as one of the year's best games. Set in the industrial city of Dunwall, the game follows Corval Otano, a legendary bodyguard to the Empress who's framed for her murder. Once imprisoned, he's offered the chance to exact vengeance on the Lord Regent and others responsible by the Outsider, who endues the disgraced bodyguard with supernatural abilities. Coming off the heels of Bioshock 2, Arcane Studios spent 3 years meticulously crafting this game, and the proof is in the final result. Now some might be quick to point out that there are a little more than a few shades of Bioshock in this title. But strip away those similarities and you'll find one of the most imaginative, immersive worlds ever created, and one I hope to continue as a franchise in the years to come. Coming in at number 5 is Mass Effect 3. Now putting aside that atrocious ending for a moment, no one can deny that this game deserves to be on this list. As a final installment to the Mass Effect trilogy, it was well received by critics, with many praising it as a dramatic, powerfully imagined final act. Following the events of Mass Effect 2, the Reapers have begun their full-blown assault on the planet Earth, and it's up to Commander Shepard and the Normandy to put a stop to the alien threat once and for all. Nearly every aspect of Mass Effect 3 has been improved, a refined AI, a new combat system, and more options for moving in and around the battlefield. But when you get right down to it, Mass Effect 3 is an immersive story with memorable characters and easily one of the best action RPGs that I've ever played, and easily deserves to be on this list. Coming in at number 4 is Borderlands 2. When the first Borderlands was released more than 3 years ago, it clearly had a lot to offer. A unique blend of first-person shooting and action RPG elements with cel-shaded graphics, an interesting alien setting, and more guns than you could handle. But its rather thin storyline and predictable AI left a lot of room for improvement. Enter Borderlands 2, a game that just about surpassed its predecessor in almost every possible way. Not only is it just an overall bigger game, but the inclusion of mech enemy types, an assortment of gun combinations, and a more robust story and characters easily makes this one of the best games of 2012, singling out Handsome Jack as one of the best villains of 2012. I highly recommend you try out this game if you haven't done so already. Trust me, you'll be glad you did. Coming in at number 3 is Hitman Absolution. Now, it's been more than 6 years since Hitman Blood Money, and many doubted whether or not IO Interactive had the chops to turn out another hit. Now, truthfully, Hitman Absolution really wasn't on my radar, that is until I did my review for the top 15 reasons why Hitman Absolution is killer, and decided to try it out. And boy am I glad I did, because let me tell you, Hitman Absolution is just one of the most perfect titles that I've ever played, bar none. The game was created using IO Interactive's proprietary game engine, Glacier 2, and it just hits the mark in every aspect of gaming. AI, physics, graphics, controls. If Call of Duty is heavy metal, then Hitman Absolution is a ballet. You're not storming at your enemy guns blazing. This is a game of patience. And with the newly added online contracts mode, there is no limit to the number of missions that can be created. Trust me, only those willing to take their time will be truly rewarded in the end. Coming in at number 2 is Far Cry 3. Now, it's been a stellar year for Ubisoft, not just with AAA titles like the Just Dance franchise, Assassin's Creed 3, and ZOMBI-U, but also smaller titles like I Am Alive and Trials Evolution. But in my opinion, the biggest game to come out of this company this year had to be Far Cry 3. Unlike previous installments that traditionally featured a lead character with military combat experience, the third game features Jason Brody, a well-to-do 20-something American who must fight rebel forces in the Pacific in order to not only survive, but also save his kidnapped friends as well. Now, there's no shortage of things to do in the archipelago: hunting animals, collecting herbs, treasure hunting, and riding all-terrain vehicles, as well as raiding enemy outposts. While longtime fans might be slightly put off by these new changes, it's clear that Ubisoft wanted to make the game more accessible in order to attract newcomers to the franchise. Having said that, it's still a fantastic game, and one that more than deserves your attention. Now, Far Cry 3 was just a hair's length from taking the top spot this year, but there is one game in particular that exceeded all my expectations and more. As a gamer, there's no better feeling than when a game underpromises and then over-delivers, and this game had everything going against it. A new studio taking the helm as developer, the start of a new trilogy, as well as the 8th installment of the franchise. Many of you probably saw this one coming, but the best video game of 2012, at least for me, was Halo 4. Set 4 years after the events of Halo 3, the game is set on a Forerunner planet where Master Chief encounters the Covenant as well as a new alien race known as the Prometheans. Now, no detail was spared in the making of this game, from fantastic controls to online multiplayer to tight, focused gameplay, but really it's two things that set Halo 4 apart from other games in the series. Firstly, this is one of the most emotionally driven storylines that I've played in a long time, with the artificial intelligence known as Cortana slowly degrading and ultimately losing her sanity. The second is the cutscenes, particularly the facial animations and the voice acting are some of the best I've seen in a video game, bar none, since LA Noire. Honestly, I doubted whether 343 Industries had what it took after taking the reins from Bungie Studios. Not only did they do the Halo series proud, but ultimately surpassed a lot of people's expectations in the process, making Halo 4 easily the best game of 2012. Now, I want to hear what you have to say. Do you agree with my list? Do you disagree with it? Do you feel that there's a game that better deserves to be on the list for best game of 2012? Feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, and as always, feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. That being said, I'm the Millennium Gamer, signing off.